And so whether it should be also adaptatory or some other issues. This is the end of my presentation, but I would like to mention some follow the Kyoto Protocol. However, the international community is that mechanisms should be available also in the next bilateral mechanisms or some others. These mechanisms prove to help many of them
Порядка 675 миллионов гривен, построено 778 гидроустановок. Задача как раз показать направление инвестора в окружающей среде.
Good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to talk about climate change and in particular energy efficiency. My presentation is in two parts. In fact, I will do the first part and then my colleague Victor Sharskevsky will do the second part. I think it's very important that business takes the opportunity to explain the actions that it's currently taking to improve its energy efficiency and to fight climate change. I was very pleased that today, System Capital Management is Ukraine's largest financial and industrial group. Possibly we may have the largest impact on Ukraine's ecological situation and are one of the largest emitters of greenhouse gases and largest users of energy. So this issue of climate change and of energy efficiency are critical to our business, and I'm pleased that both Metinvest, the Ukraine's largest metallurgical business, and DTEC, Ukraine's largest private sector energy producer, are also here to explain and discuss the actions that they're taking to tackle this problem. Okay. I think firstly we want to look at global trends because as an international business that's based in Ukraine, this has a big impact on our ability to do business. We've already heard, I think earlier from Gabriela, that there is significant uncertainties in the global framework that governs climate change. There's uncertainty following Cancun, and the biggest concern for a business like System Capital Management is that presently there is no global framework that governs or stimulates carbon reduction. There are a number of initiatives, but yet we have Kyoto Protocol, which has worked to a certain extent, but it is about to expire. And as we look at it as a business, there is no replacement currently in the wings. While I understand that there is an intention to have a replacement, there is no replacement, and business does not like uncertainty. When you're planning to invest billions of dollars in renovating your plants or creating new generating capacity or more efficient steel production capacity, you have to look at the numbers. And a global framework would have the impact of giving us greater certainty over what the price of carbon would be. Presently, for example, the price of carbon in Ukraine is about 12 euros per tonne. Most global analysts predict that the level of carbon pricing that's necessary to drive sustained investment and to move to a low carbon economy should be $36 a tonne. And that target of $36 a tonne will only really be achieved where there is a consistent and solid global framework in place. So, from our point of view, we would like to see COP17 in Durban, the next major meeting of the UN framework, create this future, a more consistent future. And I think Victor will talk about the current Kyoto Protocol in a moment. I would also say that we see leadership from the EU, but we also see uncertainty from the EU as to whether their target will be 20% or 30% in terms of reductions. And we don't really see leadership yet from the United States or China. Rather, we see in those important markets confusion as to what the future developments will be in terms of carbon pricing. So, in summary, a difficult environment in which to make significant investment decisions, because it's not clear what the price of carbon will be, and therefore how profitable those investment decisions will be in the long term. Those are the sort of problematical environment that we face ourselves in, but I think it's very important to turn to the role of business. What is the role of business in tackling climate change? And the first bullet point there, I think, is by far and away the most important. What will drive businesses' developments in terms of moving to low carbon is competitiveness. The first aspect for us is to be able to compete, whether that's to be able to sell steel competitively in a global marketplace, to be able to sell iron ore competitively, or to be able to produce electricity that can be used here in Ukraine and exported to the European Union. So competitiveness and being able to produce either energy or steel at a low cost per ton is what will drive and what does drive our investments, and I'll be talking about our investments in a moment. What is also very important for us is a good national regulatory framework that places a clear price on carbon, and as I said before, the third point, a clear international framework that places a price on carbon. If you have a very big business, what you have to consider in transformation to a lower carbon, lower energy business is the level of investment you need to make. And you have to commit that investment not for 3 years or 5 years, but you have to think about 15 years in advance if you're going to be able to ensure that that investment will pay off. And so that's really the challenge for us. We also want to work with our stakeholders. So today is a great opportunity for us to speak to other parties about what is the future for a lower carbon Ukraine. I think it's also important for business that we report on the actions we're taking. What are we actually doing to tackle climate change? How are we reducing greenhouse gas emissions? And how are we improving our energy efficiency? And we'll have a couple of examples of that. Let's move to the core subject of energy efficiency. We made energy efficiency a core strategy of our group back in 2008. And in a moment, I'm going to show you some of the progress that we've made. From our point of view, we believe that we can produce steel using less energy, and we can generate and transmit electricity also using less energy, and we are therefore ready to commit the investment to do that. It's not just in our energy and metallurgical businesses that we're taking this effort to improve our performance. We have many other businesses, but for example, in our hotels, we're moving towards using energy-efficient light bulbs in the Donbass Palace and Opera. In our printing and publishing company, Сегодня Multimedia, we're exploring the opportunities of using solar energy both to heat and light buildings and perhaps to power our printing plant. So in each area in our business, we're looking at how energy efficiency can be implemented and implemented successfully. It's also important to say that we believe that we have a role as Ukraine's largest business to encourage others also to behave responsibly in terms of encouraging energy efficiency. So we partnered with the UK government on a public information program to encourage consumers to reduce their use of energy, and we partnered with the National Agency of Ukraine for Energy Efficiency and the German government to hold a large conference in Donetsk last year, where we had over 250 businesses, both German and Ukrainian, to look at how we could transfer knowledge and expertise across businesses to use energy more efficiently. So it's not just about spending money on investment, it's also about education to change behaviour and raise awareness. Now, that all sounds like really nice words, but what have we actually done over the past 2 years since we made energy efficiency a priority? And you can see the figures here in front of you. We focused, I think, on 3 areas. We focused on reducing our use of electrical energy, focused on our use of thermal energy, and on fuels, both in transport and for industrial uses. You can see in 2008 the savings were major. In fact, in financial terms, and remember, as a business, what drives us is profitability and being able to be a good low-cost producer. So saving money is an enormous impetus for us to spend money on investment. And over the past 2 years, we've been able to realize savings of 215 million hryvnia, or if you want to prepare it in dollars, $27 million. And that's over 2 years. Now there's a consolidated figure. So once you've made that energy saving, you're saving that every year going forward. So these are significant amounts of money that you can actually save for your business if you take the time to consider how you can use energy more effectively. So what we see from this particular point is that, if you're a responsible business, it's actually good for business. Using less energy saves you money and makes you a more effective producer. Turning our attention for a second, I think, to greenhouse gases, we're investing significantly in our business. Over the next 10 years, we'll invest $10 billion in Ukraine in improving our business. And this includes reconstructing power plants, reconstructing steel plants to reduce emissions. And our objective is to be a low-cost producer per ton of carbon or per kilowatt hour of energy. And although our production has increased, what this graph shows is that over the last year, our emissions have held steady. So we're producing more, but emitting less per ton. And that's our objective. And that's what you have to do when you're looking at economic growth. You may not be you have to try and hold your emissions down by producing more effectively. And that's our objective, which we're looking to achieve. In terms of money that we're investing, we'll go quickly through this. I think everybody has asked me a question. I did an interview the other day. What did the recession mean? It meant we had less money to spend. And of course, you have to focus on your sustainability of business. That means staying in business. Consequently, in 2009, our investments in the environmental area were lower. But I want to draw your attention to one important figure, which is the figure for capital investment. That is investment in the long-term improvement in environmental performance. Even in the recession in 2009, our capital investment increased. And if you look at that sort of purple colour in the graph, you'll see that we have a long-term plan to increase our capital investment in environmental projects to improve our environmental performance. And I think last year we committed 396 million hryvnia to specific capital investments to improve our environmental performance across our business group. Very quickly, as I wish to pass over to Victor, we're also looking at what happens locally in terms of environmental performance. And you can see here a long-term trend over the last 4 years of reduction in emissions of nitrogen oxide, carbon oxide, and sulfur. And that's very important for people living in a specific city where there's a production facility. It isn't an energy efficient question, but it is about quality of life and about health. Lastly, I want to end my part of the presentation by talking about energy and talking about renewables, which follows up on the comments we've already had already. Our energy business, DTEC, is committed to changing its balance of energy provision to having 20% of all of the energy it produces being produced through renewables. And that first major project is already in place. We have announced and launched a major investment project of 1.85 billion euros to build Ukraine's largest wind farm in the Zaporizhia and Donetsk regions. And this will ultimately produce 200 megawatts of renewable wind energy for Ukraine. And one of the important aspects to make this profitable has been the legislation introduced by the government, because this is made possible by a very good piece of European quality legislation. It was based on EU legislation. So there is a feed-in tariff for declining over time, but the feed-in tariff starts at 113 euros per kilowatt hour. And this tariff is fixed in euros, and that means you know that your income is coming in euros, you know it is profitable, and you can get finance from the back of that to be able to construct that investment. And that business case is essential if Ukraine is to be able to re-engineer its energy base towards more renewable and sustainable resources. With that note on renewables, I will now hand over to my colleague Victor, who will take you through what our largest and one of Ukraine's largest business has done in terms of improving its performance in energy efficiency and reducing greenhouse gases. Victor.